Wine and Waste is now live! Coming at you in my dinosaur onesie for a special Halloween edition of Wine and Waste. It's nice to see everyone again. We'll just wait for Emma to join. It's been quite a while, and I'm super excited to be back. We have a lot to catch up on. I can see that Emma is kind of just joining the conversation now, and I will add her together and do all of the catch up because I'm very excited to chat with her. We haven't been able to chat for a while.
I know what! I want my unicorn onesie.
The, Emma and I did not plan this. We did not talk about wearing like costumes or onesies. We both just did it. So that's just how awesome we are. Great costumes alike. You're amazing, Emma. I miss you so much.
You're amazing. I missed you last month.
I know,
Before
right?
we start chat, because I'm just always so excited to talk to you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for joining us for Wine and Waste. If you're not familiar with Wine and Waste, the first Wednesday of every month, except last month. No, thank you, girls. Sorry, one of the neighbors' dogs is going and they're in quarantine with me in here. The first Wednesday of every month, we sit down, we tackle a different waste-related topic. Waste Free Edmonton is a grassroots volunteer-run organization. Shawn is one of our wonderful volunteers. I'm also one of our wonderful volunteers. We're looking to grow the team. Specifically, we're looking for content creators, a newsletter specialist, and a fundraising manager. So if any of those feel like they're in your skill set, if you have an awesome onesie, if you want to join our team, let us know.
Yeah, I'm glad you started us off with that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Perfect. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up because, yeah, we're always looking for more people to participate in Wine and Waste. Like Emma said, it's all volunteer-based. So these, like, Waste for Edmonton is all community members that really want to see action towards waste reduction, things like a single-use plastic bylaw, things just like waste reduction at home, and how we can support each other in making Edmonton the most waste-free city there is on the planet. So please, if you have the capacity to volunteer, even if it's just writing one blog or, you know, now that events are kind of starting to happen again, we are planning on hosting a couple of seminars/workshops on different topics, and have a bit more in-person meetups, hopefully, given the COVID situation is kind of can change pretty rapidly here in Alberta. We're going to do the best we can to try and meet up in person, and if we can't, you know, COVID has given us the opportunity to host documentary screenings. We had a couple fun workshops, so we're going to try and keep doing things like that to stay engaged, build community, support each other in waste reduction. So yeah, feel free to contact us and let us know if you want to get involved. So yes.
Without further ado, welcome to Wine and Waste. The reason Shawn and I both surprised each other wearing a dragon and unicorn onesie today is because we are tackling all things Halloween. We're going to touch on costumes, pumpkins, trick or treat, and this really great Waste Free Edmonton initiative called Trash and Treat. So that's kind of our agenda for Wine and Waste today. We love when you join us live, so you can chat with us in the comments. But if you're watching this later, we also love to engage after the show as well. So yeah, costumes. That was the first thing on the list. I love your dragon onesie.
I love your unicorn onesie. So the cool thing about this onesie is I got it from a thrift store in Jasper, actually, probably close to a decade ago now, which seems pretty wild. And I bust it out. Sometimes I just wear it, not even when it's Halloween, but I have definitely gotten use out of this being my Halloween costume for almost a decade because it's very easy to throw on. It's fun. It's easy to go to a party or go trick-or-treating in or go pick up garbage in. It's very comfy and warm, so it's just nice to wear, and sometimes during the fall and winter months when it's a little bit more chilly. But that kind of touches on the cool thing about this costume is that it has lasted me so long, and that I don't have to not only stress about worrying what I'm going to be for Halloween, but I continuously reuse the same costume for the most part. And that kind of touches on how you can make Halloween costumes fun, memorable. If people know what you're going to be, they can always, it's kind of like, Shawn showed up as a dinosaur again, classic. You know, it can be a bit of a running gag or an inside joke with your friends or parties that you go to. So that's what I really like about having this dinosaur onesie. I don't know, what about you, Emma? What do you usually do for costumes?
I literally put this on so I could talk about why I love this as a Halloween costume. I used to be super into like making new ones every year, but I don't know, like the older I get and the more hobbies I have and the more stuff I'm juggling, and like it's just one of those things that's kind of slipped through the cracks. And I realized for a couple of years I just wasn't doing anything. And especially working with kids and like going into schools, if you're ever reading books or doing programs and stuff, it's fun for them if you show up. And so I realized, like, I'm seeing, if it's a different class I'm seeing every time, they don't know I've worn this unicorn onesie before. Like, they don't know. So it's new every time for them. And last year, I super appreciated it because we did give out candy last year, but I was sitting outside and I had a little like social distance table set up, and I was like fully clothed underneath and had this over top. So I was super toasty sitting outside for hours.
Nice.
And yeah, it's one of those things like you don't have to stress. And if you're, kids are coming to the door or whatever, just throw it on, be comfy, cozy. It was also bonus use. We were playing one of our favorite family board games to play is Unstable Unicorns. Have you played it?
No, I don't think I have.
So good. I won't get like too far into that right now, but whoever's wearing the most colors gets to go first. So before we played, I like ran to the bedroom to put my unicorn onesie on and got back out to the table. But my stepson had the same idea and came wearing a shirt with like 30 colors on it. So I lost anyways. But
yeah, I think having Halloween costumes brings up a really good topic about there's quite a few stigmas around Halloween that I came across while reflecting on this chat and also thinking about Halloween waste and waste around Halloween. And one of the kind of dogmatic stigmas that I think needs to be deconstructed ties into fashion as well, and textile waste, is that you don't always have to wear something different. You don't always have to wear something new, and you shouldn't be like judged for just, you know, if you have a hoodie that you wear all the time and it's just like your favorite hoodie, that's, you know, that's cool. Like, I think it's great to have a really special hoodie or a special jacket that you wear all the time. Mm-hmm. You don't need a different outfit for every single different occasion. Like, it's totally okay to reuse clothing and wear the same thing. I mean, sanitary things aside, like obviously wash your clothing and stuff, but I think we need to start making it cool to re-wear the same thing, especially something around Halloween that comes every year. I love Halloween. I love spooky things. My house, we've been watching like horror movies every night for the last week. And so I really like this Halloween. I like when people put out decorations. We have tickets to go to Dark in Fort Edmonton Park, which is pretty much like a giant spooky haunted house in Fort Edmonton Park. So I think there's a lot of cool things around this holiday to celebrate kind of spooky and weird things. And I don't think that us indulging in that means that we should indulge in creating more waste. And so that's why I'm glad that we're able to have this conversation, because it maybe doesn't get the same amount of attention that Christmas has been getting, because there's different types of waste for Halloween. And so, like I said, like this, I even thrifted. And so like going to a thrift store is one of the best things you can do for building a Halloween costume. If, say, you don't want to wear a dinosaur onesie or a dragon onesie every year, like you actually want to do something different, think of like a person or a character that you can do and imagine the type of outfit that you'd want. And then there are quite a few thrift stores in the city that have specialty clothing that they keep for around this time of year. Or a big thing you can do if you don't want to spend any money, reach out to your friend circles. See if you can remember if someone was something last year and they're not going to be, say someone was a character from Game of Thrones and you know that they have a cloak. Message them and be like, hey, are you going to use that cloak again? Or can I borrow that cloak from you? Is there anything I can help you with? So like trading costumes with your friends is a really cool way to not only build community and chat with your friends and keep in contact, but you also get to try all these different outfits out and share clothing rather than, you know, this like individualistic mindset of like, all this clothing is mine. Even though I'm not going to use it anymore, it's going to stay here and sit. So that was one of the biggest things that I thought, trading between your friends and family, or hand-me-downs to, if you have kids and your kids have outgrown costumes that they had maybe last year or 2 years ago, find someone with the kids that those clothings will fit. And I think the parents will really appreciate it. What about you, Emma? Any tips for hunting for Halloween?
I want to backpedal because we went through.
Sorry.
So if you're not wanting to wear the same thing every year, like there are so many ways to reduce waste besides just reusing exactly the same one. So like Shawn and I are doing, I haven't had this quite as long. I think I've had mine, I want to say like 5 years I've had this. So 10, very impressive. But I mean, I don't necessarily need to be the one reusing this. If anybody else wanted to borrow it, or if I wanted to trade with somebody, even if it's just for night of, other people reusing it is great too. So if I'm done with this, either I can pass it on, I can lend it to someone, I can try to sell it on like Marketplace or Kijiji, I can just hand it on to the next person, I can donate it to a thrift store, although oftentimes so much of the like I think people don't really understand. I was speaking with Sarah from Blenders recently about how much of the clothing that we donate to thrift stores and secondhand stores gets exported. Like it's astronomical. Most of it never hits the shelf. So yeah, it can feel good to think that when you donate, you're giving and someone else is wearing it, but realistically, often people aren't. So if you can take ownership of something that you're done with, whether it's clothes, a costume, whatever, any item around the house, if you can physically find somebody to pass it on to instead of kind of just sending it off for someone else to find and buy, I find it has a much greater chance of being used again by someone else. And on that note, buy nothing groups. Are you in a buy nothing group?
Yeah.
Oh, I love my buy nothing group. Even if like I wanted blue nail polish to go with this, I don't need to go out and buy new blue nail polish. I can just be like, hey, does anybody have some blue nail polish I can walk over and borrow this night? And I'm sure like 10 people would be like, hey, yeah, come use mine, and drop it back off. If you're not in a buy nothing group, your family group chat, or if you play on a soccer team, hey, can anybody bring some of this to next practice or next game? Like there are so many ways to connect, like you were saying, with other friends. So
and I just thought of like a costume swap would be a really fun thing to host with your circle of friends or your community league. Like message your community league or message a local church and be like, hey, let's organize a costume swap where people bring costumes, and then if you bring something, you get like a free trade, and if you don't bring something, maybe you just donate to a charity or donate to the community league to like get entry into that clothing swap or something, or the costume swap, because I think that would be a lot of fun for people, not only getting a new costume, but you're also building community around sharing costumes. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is like it's totally possible to rent costumes.
Yeah, I saw you made a note in our document. Before we dive into this, I just want to make sure everybody, if you're joining us, please, if you have suggestions, comments, questions, more ideas, anything you want to share, please feel free to let us know in the chat. But I would love for you to tell us about this costume rental thing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to tell you about renting a costume, and then I have some like stats about why it's important to not buy new costumes, because I love looking up stats and I love sharing with them because it kind of puts waste reduction in perspective. But yes, it is possible to rent Halloween costumes. There's a really awesome business called Theater Garage here in Edmonton, and they are just off of 90, oh my gosh, 99th and I want to say 56. It's called Theater Garage. They're an amazing locally owned company, and they have a bunch of costumes that are used to rent out by high school theater productions or university theater productions or local theater productions. So they have a wide array of costumes that you can rent out. It's fairly affordable depending on how elaborate the costume is you're looking for, and they usually let you rent it for like 3 to 4 days. So it's really accessible. They're really nice. They're really great. They even, before COVID, they were doing a bunch of like learn how to sew classes, and they've had like understanding how to do makeup classes. So they're trying to build their own niche community around costumes, and they're trying to be as waste conscious as possible as you can in an industry like that. So they do hang on to all of their costumes, and sometimes when they're overwhelmed with costumes, they do have things for sale where you can go buy things that have been maybe used for a couple years by theater companies, and no one's doing any of those productions anymore, or their costume hasn't been rented out. So that is a cool option that you can use instead of buying something new, because then you rent it for Halloween parties or going out trick-or-treating, and then you just take it back. Then you don't have to worry about storage. You're not buying something new. So yeah, that business is called Theater Garage. I'm sure there's other ones in the city, but I couldn't remember any off the top of my head. But maybe that's something we can make a post about later. So that's
anybody out there knows of any, please be sure to reach out, comment in the chat on the video afterwards, or you can send us a DM. We'd be happy to investigate and look into that further.
Absolutely. And so why it's important to either reuse costumes, get secondhand costumes, share costumes, trade costumes, rent costumes.
Upcycle, DIY.
Upcycle
Talk about that after your stats, because I've got some things to say.
Perfect. Okay, I'll be quick about this so we can get into, so it's estimated that 83% of costume materials are from oil-based plastics, so like synthetic fibers. And so it's estimated that every year, and these stats were only from the UK. I couldn't find...
I think that's some from the US too, no?
Yeah, I did have some from the US. But this one in particular is from the UK. Because I couldn't find stats for Canada, but you can imagine how just the UK can be applied to also America and like Canada.
It's so much bigger than the UK.
And so this is just in Halloween costumes. So not even like candy wrappers, not even like plastic decorations. So it's estimated that every year 2,000 tons of plastic waste gets generated, used, and thrown out around Halloween every year. That's about 83 million, like the equivalent of 83 million plastic bottles just for Halloween costumes.
That's so crazy.
2,000 tons of plastic waste just gets used for Halloween and disposed of in the form of Halloween costumes. So that's like plastic masks, synthetic fabric that's used for usually like Scream character costumes and stuff, where people just use it for the night and then throw it away, which I was kind of flabbergasted. I didn't think it would be that much in retrospect to Halloween costumes only. I thought maybe like candy wrappers would be different, but I couldn't find any specific stats on candy wrappers because that's pretty hard to track. But yeah, as far as textile waste, that would be considered like plastic waste because it's from oil-based plastic synthetic fibers. 2,000 tons, which is pretty wild. That just ends up in landfills.
It's like go into making that too and transporting it, and like it's not just the item that's being wasted. There are so many resources being wasted.
Yeah, and I guess this is a good time to highlight that that number can seem very overwhelming as an individual like you or I or someone watching this. Emma and I reiterate this all the time because it's important to keep in mind when we talk about waste reduction is that we are all just individuals doing the best that we can. There's no shame in anything that Emma and I talk about. When we talk about these issues, we want to bring them to the forefront of conversation so that we can start having a healthy dialogue around waste creation in our society. And as individuals, it's important to not take on the burden of all of the plastic waste created in the world. It's important to not shame yourself for using plastic because it's in the world we live today, it's very difficult not to. We're here to help each other, build a community around waste reduction, and support each other on our individual waste reduction journeys. So please don't get overwhelmed by any stats that we bring up. I just find it very interesting, and I think it helps to add context to why waste reduction is important. Just don't feel bad about using plastic, but it's important to have conversations about how we can reduce our waste. Yeah. On that note, that's the stat that I wanted to bring to it. We have a comment. In the future, there'll be no more plastic when more people care about plastic. I think that there's a lot of unnecessary plastic that gets used in our society, for sure. And I think there's a lot of great alternatives to plastic. I think there may be some exceptions, such as like medical use of plastic. But I think that there's a lot of potential for like bioplastics and other types of technology for that use. But yeah, that's a great point. That's what we're working towards.
Yeah. So moving on from our stats, and yes, like really good point that when Shawn and I are tackling these issues, it's never coming from a place of judgment, hopefully inspiration, community, support, like you said. So take all of the good stuff that you can. It's really easy to feel bogged down and get like this crazy eco-anxiety with all of these numbers, but it is important to recognize like this is the why behind some of the choices that we're trying to make to be less wasteful. But when it comes to costumes, so we talked about reusing, sharing, swapping, thrifting, making your own though, and upcycling is also like, I know tons of people, even like when I was a kid growing up, they would have their parents making their costumes. So even if you are making your own costumes, there's tons that you can do to be a little bit more sustainable. Instead of buying brand new fabric, you can look for thrifted fabric. You can use old bed sheets, anything that's maybe like become too pilly to continue using, if it's just for a one night thing, or if you can use safety pins instead of sewing it to kind of hold it in place. One thing that came to mind right away, I know Shawn is also a huge Drag Race fan. Sasha Velour, I watched a YouTube video of her, I think, sharing her closet after she won her season, and the cuffs for her Madonna look were just paper, and she still had them. So you don't need to spend a ton of money on these really sophisticated materials. If it's just like for show for one night, pin on some paper, hot glue something here. I know one of the points that Shawn wrote in our show notes that you didn't bring up actually, and I'm surprised, is avoiding glitter and micro, because all of the micro, like that's a huge one at Halloween. I don't know if you wanted to touch on that more.
No, you can.
Sasha, Mel's agreeing. Yes, Sasha is so talented and creative. She's brilliant.
Sasha is amazing. If you want to talk about that, that's one of the biggest things that came to mind is avoiding glitter and sparkles because of the microplastics and because they're there's no way to recycle that. There's no way to even control that. I'm sure everyone having this conversation has experience with glitter and how it just gets everywhere, and you couldn't clean up glitter if you tried. So when it gets into our waterways and our ecosystems, like it's not great.
Yeah, so definitely something to avoid. One of my favorite upcycled costumes that I did a few years ago was a paper bag princess, which I'm realizing now would be perfect with your onesie.
So good.
But I had just used some brown craft paper, but like thinking back on it now, I've been, when I'm done with my dog food bags, what I've been doing is cutting them open. They've got like a shiny like paper that's like inked and glossed and can't be recycled on the outside. And there's a layer of brown craft paper. And then there's another layer of brown craft paper with plastic adhered to it. So I've just been cutting it out into these long strips and separating it so that anything that can be recycled will get recycled. But I've been rolling up the brown paper and the brown paper with the plastic lining for Christmas wrapping paper.
That is so smart.
But
look
where
at you
I'm
go.
going with this is I've realized as I've been deconstructing these dog food bags is like flipping one inside out is your paper bag princess costume. Like,
Oh, that's great.
so like the day-to-day things that you kind of look at and take for granted or don't give a second thought to, like start examining the things that are around you and the things that you use every day and be like what potential does this have? And if you need help with this, ask kids, because they see so much potential in like mundane everyday objects. If you need to think outside the box, like kids. What about better treats to give? That's an excellent question. Actually, I think it's about time we can move on from costumes. We're going to talk about pumpkins, and then we're going to talk about treats to give. So really awesome.
Should we jump around? Do you want to talk about treats now and do pumpkins after, just since we got a question about it?
I thought it would be a nice segue into trash and treat at the end.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Right?
Okay, Mel, we will get to that.
We promise. We'll
quickly.
for pumpkins. Do you carve pumpkins?
Yes, I actually I try and grow pumpkins every year. Last year I had a really bad year for my garden as far as squash goes, but this year was way better. So I actually have 5 pumpkins in my backyard that I grew myself. So that's really exciting, and I'm really excited to carve them. And I keep the seeds, and I roast them and eat them. I should probably save some for like next season, like dry them out and keep them to reuse next season. But I end up roasting them and eating them. So maybe this year I'll try and remember. And then also something I wanted to do this year. Last year was the first year that I made like homemade pumpkin pie from pumpkins that I got. Which worked out really well. Like I made pumpkin puree. I ended up having way more pumpkin puree than just for 2 pumpkin pies. So I tried to make pumpkin pancakes. That actually turned out really great. But this year I want to try and go the distance and make pumpkin ravioli. So I make dough and then make ravioli with the pumpkin as well.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, so I'm really excited.
Get in on that. That sounds good. Every year, it's been, I don't even know how many years. I want to say this is going to be our 5th or 6th year. There's another family. So my partner, stepson, and I get together with another couple and their daughter for the last 5 or 6 years, and we always carve pumpkins together. So it's 6 pumpkins. It's so cute. It's 6 pumpkins, but like when you realize how much food that is, like I think it was one year where we only did the seeds and I saw how much pumpkin was left, and then I started thinking about like the rest of the pumpkins on the block, and then in the city, and then in the province, and then in the country, and what's happening with all of these pumpkins. Like it's crazy. Do you have stats on pumpkins or anything? I didn't look.
No, I should have though.
You know what? Emily and Biz just did Becoming Less is the Waste Free Edmonton podcast. And Emily and Biz just did an episode on pumpkins. I haven't listened to it yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if they touched on this. So if anybody is feeling like they need more pumpkin inspo following Wine and Waste, definitely check out that episode.
So just from a quick Google search, so this is for the United States, 66,000 acres of pumpkins were harvested in 2020. That equaled 1.5 billion pounds of usable pumpkins, with over 2 billion produced overall, which is wild because that means that 0.5 billion pounds of pumpkins got like culled and wasn't used, I guess. But yeah, so about 2 billion pounds of pumpkins get used in the United States.
That's wild. So please use if you're buying a pumpkin, make sure it's locally, like grown locally, sold locally is a huge thing you can do. And then use up as much as you possibly can. So when we do our pumpkins and we have the 6 pumpkins, I find it so much easier to use the seeds and the like stringy guts and the flesh if you're like organized and good to go from the jump.
Mm-hmm.
So what I've done that has like been a game changer, is we cover the table with, usually I try to do brown paper that can just go in the compost bin after, because it won't be recycled after it gets all the juice and guts on it. And we have all separate bowls. So all of the seeds from everybody's pumpkin go into one bowl instead of everybody using one bowl for their own. All of the seeds go into a couple different seed bowls, and then all of the stringy guts that like you don't really want to bake with, that goes into a separate bowl, and I puree that, and usually I'll use that in dog treats.
Ooh.
Or if you look up, and I'm sure there are like actual pumpkin loaf recipes, but I find if you look up zucchini loaf recipes and just swap pumpkin, there's just more of them for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you want to add pumpkin spice, great. If you don't, like, it's still delicious. And then I get those off of the table once we get into scraping, and we scrape like everything. This seems like common sense, but I think lots of people don't think about it when they're carving their pumpkins. The thinner the wall of the pumpkin is, first of all, the more of the like meat you get, but second of all, your whole pumpkin glows like orange, and like the whole thing lights up, and it's so beautiful. But all of the fleshy bits go into separate bowls, and some of it'll just get pureed, some of it we throw in the oven, especially the pieces that like you carve out, like the whole chunks. Like if you're doing the triangle for the jack-o'-lantern eye, I'll throw those in the oven and roast them. And then like we'll have soups. We'll have, pumpkin soup is so good.
Pumpkin soup is so good.
I try to get as much of it like well, I kind of miss out on some of the carving, and my pumpkin is usually rushed in the last one. But like by the time everybody else is done theirs, we're already eating pumpkin seeds. There's already pumpkin in the oven. And then often I'll get to send the other family home with a bunch of soup as well, so it's not all staying in our home. But I find the more bowls we have and the more we can like separate as we go, it's less overwhelming than like trying to separate your seeds from the stringy guts, from the chunks, from the, so it's like one small thing you can do that makes the world of a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad that you brought that up, because setting yourself up beforehand is huge, because it just makes everything way more accessible and way more convenient. Mel brought up a really good point. You can donate pumpkins to local farms as well, because pigs love pumpkins. I have a couple friends who own like hobby farms, so they definitely will take all of the pumpkins that they can get their hands on. Maybe that would be cool if we can find a list of local farms that might accept those things, or somewhere in the city where people can go drop their pumpkins off. This is probably a really good time to promote the compost school. Typically does take pumpkins. They usually have a day that's like a pumpkin smash. So that can be pretty fun to take your kids to a pumpkin smash at the compost school that's down by Fort Edmonton Park at the John Jansen Nature Center. And also you can also just compost your pumpkin at home if you have a composter. As well as this year's a little different, because now this Halloween all Edmontonians have food scraps carts and have green carts. So hypothetically, if you don't want to take your pumpkin to a farm, or you don't compost at home, or you don't want to go to the compost school, you can actually just put it in your green cart and the city will take it. So but it's nice that the city has that now to make composting more accessible, which is really great. So yeah, that's some really cool stuff about pumpkins.
I want to say that was a game changer for me. One of the friends that comes over, he stopped carving the top off, like he stopped removing the top, and he started cutting a hole on the bottom.
Oh.
And then you just set it that way, like if you have a candle in it, you're not getting wax inside of your pumpkin, and the bottom's not sitting on the concrete anymore. So you put the candle on the cement and then your pumpkin over top of it, and then you can roast that whole bottom. And that's like tons of food from the bottom. So cut
It's actually smart.
Yeah, I'm like, how did I never? And I feel like it interferes less with your design because you don't have to worry about navigating the top of it with the whatever image you're trying to carve in. So that was like a brilliant game changer.
That's a smart idea. I'm definitely going to do that this year.
I like highly recommend. It makes everything so much easier. What do you use for carving tools?
I honestly, I just use like a regular kitchen knife and then like smaller steak knives.
Yeah, serrated ones are good. I find serrated knives work really well. We years ago bought those like cheap dollar store saw kits. I think lots of people buy it every year, but we just have a basket in the back of one of our drawers with our teaspoons and like measuring cups and stuff. And it just lives at the back year round. Like normally we can't reach it. And we've been using the same ones for years and years and years. So that's another thing, like hold on to those because they are really effective.
And that really ties into
Teeth on your costume.
they are very sharp. And that kind of touches on how just having that level of preparedness can go a long way to making waste reduction habits easier for you. If you have somewhere in advance where you store pumpkin carving utensils. You're gonna, sorry, just saw the comment looking fierce. Anyways, being a little bit prepared can go a long way when it comes to reducing waste and living a more waste-conscious lifestyle. Once you get into that routine, once you build that habit, once you have those places for excess waste to be stored, to be reused later, or you have place to store materials that you use maybe once a year, such as your pumpkin carving gear, it can really make your life easier and make waste reduction more accessible.
Yeah, and if you're feeling overwhelmed because you're like, I'm not prepared yet, I don't have those things, I haven't saved them, now's a great time to start. So after you carve your pumpkins this year, or after Halloween, think about what you're doing with the things, how you can make them available for you for next year, what worked well for you, what didn't, because I mean, what works for one person might not work for the next. So maybe the most sustainable thing for you is after you've used these tools, if you don't know you're going to be in the same house next year, or you don't know you're going to carve a pumpkin next year, maybe you can pass them on to someone in your community, in your family, in your buy nothing group. I'm sure there's somebody else that can make use of those. So even if they just get circulated around, you don't need to be responsible for holding on to them, but there are other ways to make sure that they continue to, or if you don't have them, ask to borrow. Borrow in the right way.
Absolutely. Build community.
Yeah. Awesome.
And I would also wonder, I would be curious because there are a couple like tool shares. What are they called? Oh my gosh, why am I blinking?
The tool library?
Yeah, the tool library. I wonder if they would have something like that. Oh,
it would be interesting to find out. We should ask.
We should. We'll find an answer to that question because I wonder if the tool library would have, tools in place, seasonal tools like that. If not, maybe this is a good reason for them to start having stuff like that.
Is there anything else you wanted to add about pumpkins, or anybody hanging out with us tonight? If anybody has anything else to add, any questions, any more advice? We're not the kind of gatekeepers of knowledge here. We're all just figuring it out. So we will.
Yeah, this is a conversation. This is not a lecture that Emma and I are hosting. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to voice them in the chat. Yes, circular economies. I'm actually really excited for the future. We're building a seminar type event around circular economies and what a circular economy is, and so hopefully we'll be tapping into that really soon. So keep your eyes and ears open for that event. But yeah, I'm curious now. I'm gonna investigate the tool library to see if they have anything like that.
Resource.
But yeah, we got a comment about Halloween decorations. But do we want to jump to trick-or-treating first, or do you want to talk about Halloween decorations? Because I have a couple like cool little crafts that you can do.
I
for the
like
Halloween decorations?
ridiculous, but for whatever reason, decorations weren't even on my radar. And I think it's because we don't have somewhere to store them. So we just haven't for the last couple of years. But I know my partner, my stepson both love getting decorations out. So yeah, it wasn't even on. I have one thing to add, but I'll let you take the floor and jump in with my one exciting tidbit that I have.
Okay, so I have some fun, like I have a fun story with homemade Halloween decorations. So my uncle really loves Halloween as well. So he would very often build like bodies out of, he would take his clothes and then stuff them full of leaves and like tie the ends and like put like there was dead bodies hanging from the tree or like a body laying on the grass, or sometimes he would put like one year he would put a person, like a stuffed, he would stuff his clothes and jeans and jacket and shoes and have them sitting by the front door, and then just have it be like someone sitting there. And then the next year he would actually sit there and pretend to be that same stuffed scarecrow-esque body, and then he would scare people when they came to the door, and he would just alternate years. So then when the kids would come up to the door, they would remember and be like, I don't know if this is real or not, because one year it wasn't real and one year it was.
That's
So
so funny.
a cool thing you can do is take all the leaves that have fallen from the trees and just kind of tie off your clothing with elastics, and just stuff them with leaves. And then it can look like a body, or you can set it up somewhere. But yeah, that is a long game. My uncle is very dedicated, but I always remember that as a kid because he would come to our house and do it a lot of the time. Because at that time he lived in an apartment. And so, yeah, so you could do fun stuff like that. Also, egg carton bats is a really cool thing you can do. So you can cut up like egg cartons, and you can draw, like you can take 3 pockets, like cut it up into pairs of, or 3 egg holder things, and then cut out the 2 sides, and it looks like a bat. And you can either like color it black, or you can draw little eyes on it. And then you can just kind of take twine and hang them from your roof, and they kind of look like bats. So that's a fun way to do bats that is easily get like recyclable after, because a lot if it's the cardboard ones, I know there are styrofoam egg cartons, which I wouldn't recommend getting. If you can avoid those, it's better to get the kind of cardboardy ones. And then the other one that I thought was really cool was spider webs out of yarn. So if you have like black or white yarn, you can just make a spider web out of them, and then after you're done with that, just like bundle it up into your yarn. And so
We have a comment from Adrian Cooney too that's saying a string of dead crab apples. That's clever.
oh, that's
Especially
cool.
if they're all like you got to pick them up anyways. And now,
Yeah,
I like that idea.
that is a really cool idea. So yeah, there's lots of fun stuff you can do. Those are just kind of the 3 that came to my mind that I have experience with, so I know that they can make good Halloween costumes or good Halloween decorations. If you have any other cool kind of homemade sustainable decorations, the other thing I would say is if you do buy Halloween decorations, just reuse them. I would hope most people do that if they're spending money on Halloween decorations, that they're not just throwing them out every year and that they're reusing them year after year. But maybe not. So just make sure if you're buying decorations, store them properly and keep them in good shape, so that you can reuse them.
Yeah, that's good advice. I guess I have 2 things to add. One is like a half thought out artist brain idea. The other one though, we recently redid our front landscaping, and the things that includes is we have these LED lights. They're not solar, unfortunately, but they don't take up a ton of electricity just because they are LEDs. But they come with a little remote so you can change the color. So like normally they're just like warmish white color, but for Halloween we can change them to like purple or orange or red, depending on how spooky we want to be. So something that's just in the ground all the time, we can make a little tweak. But one thing I was thinking of doing, And maybe I need you to talk me either in or out of this, because I just don't. So I just finished decluttering like crazy. Like in the last 2 weeks, I've probably passed on like over 200 items in my buy nothing group.
Wow.
Because it's been like years of accumulating stuff for art lessons that I'm just not able to teach right now. So I'm like, I need to rehome this. Like I'm tired of my basement being a clutter zone. So I got rid of tons of stuff. I went through my old fabric bins, got rid of tons of my old fabric. And one of the things I was trying to rehome that nobody took is it's just black polyester fabric. So polyester, don't particularly want to keep it in like the wash stream releasing all the microplastics. I think it used to be a duvet cover. Nobody else wanted it. I'm like, I feel like this will be a lost opportunity. I was going to bring it into Blenders for recycling. They'll either sell it or turn it into something new. But I'm like, what could I turn it into? And then I started thinking of Halloween decorations. But my one dog is terrified of anything that like blows in the wind. Our neighbor used to have like a ghoul with like the draped black fabric, and she would stand literally the whole entire day and just bark at this thing. And so last year they spoiled me and they took it down and they changed their decorations, which was so kind. But like our house was stress zone. But I was thinking of doing something like that where she can't see with this black duvet cover. This isn't like the most sustainable thing in the world, but you can do packing tape castings of your body. Like you would cover yourself. I don't have any saran wrap. I'd have to borrow some or like reuse an old clear plastic bag, and you just wrap your body with packing tape, and then you can rip it off and you have this like mold of your body. So I was thinking of making a mold of my body and then ripping strips of this black fabric and covering it so that it would be like a ghouly, dangly, ghosty figure. Do I want to do that?
Yeah,
or
I think that would be cool.
To Blenders where it'll get like turned in hopefully to like a bath mat, or maybe it'll get shredded for stuffing, or like I don't know what I want to do with this.
You could always try that and see how you feel about it, and then take it to Blenders afterwards. Because you could just take, if you do happen to use tape, you could just tape it off. You could also use clothespins to like hold it together. Or
so this is something I'm thinking of. If anybody has ideas about what to do with a giant sheet of black fabric, let me know. If anybody wants a giant sheet of black fabric, let me know. But
let Emma know you need black fabric.
Yeah, I think that's going to be my project, is to figure out how to upcycle this into something that I can use year after year.
Cool. So we're actually motoring through this. So it's already almost 7:50, and I really want to get to trick-or-treating and Halloween candy, because I am on a myth-busting rampage. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm ready to deconstruct some myths around Halloween. And one of the biggest ones that has always been a pet peeve of mine is that people can't give out homemade treats because of the fear of tampered Halloween candy. And I've done my research and I looked into it, and I can comfortably say that that is a fabricated myth backed by university research. So a university professor at the University of Delaware, who is a professor in sociology and criminal justice, he researched every incident of candy tampering dating back to the 1950s, and he was able to debunk, so there was only like 40 instances of it, and he was able to debunk almost all of them except for 3. And so two of them happened in like the late 50s and early 60s, and they're really like off cases where no one got hurt. Like no child has ever been killed because of tampered Halloween candy or anything like that. And the third case that he actually like ended up being debunked on its own, because it was one of the biggest cases of where a child opened up a pixie stick. I don't know if anyone's familiar with the pixie sticks, but they're those like plastic tubes that just have like sugar in them. Yeah, Big Chocolate doesn't want this news to get out. If I get axed by Big Chocolate, this is why. Because like tampered candy is a lie. And so the child ingested one of these pixie sticks that ended up having cyanide in it. And so he later died that night in hospital. They did an autopsy and there was like, there's cyanide in this. And the dad was like, it's because of this pixie stick. He ate this pixie stick. This is what happened. There needs to be justice. And so this dad got a bunch of media attention about this story. And so he was a musician and he like wrote a song about it. And he was like getting on the evening news and stuff. And the detective investigating the case thought this guy was really weird. And he's like, this guy doesn't seem like his child just tragically died. Like something is wrong here. And so the detective, while investigating the case, asked him to point out the house that the guy got the stick from. And at first the dad couldn't identify it. And then the detective came back to him and he's like, please, can you give me like an area of where you went? And so the detective did a bunch of investigation into where this pixie stick came from. The dad pointed out the house that he got it from. And so he talked to that guy. They brought him in for questioning. He had an alibi that he wasn't home at all. So the guy was like, I wasn't even giving out candy. And so then they found out that this dad had taken a life insurance policy out on both of his kids. And they later got this guy to admit that he had filled the candy stick with cyanide and killed his own son because he had debts piling up and he thought a good way to pay off his debts would be to life insurance out on his children. So even the incidents that people use to scare about homemade treats, it wasn't even a homemade treat, and it was like an inside job. It was a father, like a psychotic father murdering his own children. So I know that's dark for a wine and waste chat, but I needed to understand where this myth of people not being able to give out homemade treats, because this fear of like poisoning or razor blades, that is a myth. That's not true. There's never been an incident of someone being harmed by homemade cotton candy treats, or not cotton candy treats, trick-or-treating treats. So I think I would love to be able to bring that back into our communities where people can make homemade treats for trick-or-treaters, whether it be like candied apples or cookies or something to hand out to people where they're trick-or-treating, where it's made at home, there's minimal plastic wrap, and we take the money from big candy out of trick-or-treating and back into community. That is my story. If I get taken out by Big Chocolate, this is why. You are all witnesses.
I have two things to say in response to this. One, do you know who Bailey Sarian is?
Bailey Sarian.
She's this YouTuber who does these murder mystery and makeups. And last year, I think it might have been around Halloween, she did that pixie stick story. So if anybody was like really into that spooky story, like YouTube, Bailey Sarian, candy, whatever, I love her. But I'm like really into this dragon onesie spooky story. I'm like, Bailey or Shawn. So if Big Chocolate's not coming for you, maybe Bailey heard that you're going for her gig. But it's, super, the makeup, that's exactly.
So that,
but she did that story, and it's mind-blowing and totally messed up. But one thing, because I was thinking of homemade treats as well, when I redid my front, I have a little puppy treat station now, and so I've met so many people in our community because they stop, their dogs drink water, their dogs take a cookie, and then they go. And last year when I was giving out Halloween candy, I was also giving out treats for puppies if they came. And I feel like if it's people that you know in your community, like, would they be willing to accept like if you baked cookies, or like if you talked to them beforehand and said like, hey, I'm not giving out like pre-packaged candies. If I make something, like, are you and your family comfortable accepting it? If you have that rapport, maybe they'll say yes, maybe they'll say no, but it might be worth having that conversation. But something else that I was thinking of while I was trying to figure out how to work around like pre-packaged food is, I wonder if, like, I have a really wonderful locally owned cafe in my community. I absolutely love it. And like, such a wonderful place. So it's one of those things where you think like, I wonder if I reach out to the owner, if I could give out like little, like if I could pay them for like coupons and like maybe they could go to the Hurt Cafe and get cookies, or they could go get
Oh, that's
a
cool.
chocolate. So that's not something that I followed up with for this year, because I feel like with COVID, like things are already so weird. Businesses are jumping through so many hoops as it is. And I didn't want to burden her with another like weird ask. But
Mhm.
maybe in the future, moving forward, that might be something that we can go to like our well-loved communities and like send kids with like little gift cards or little coupons or little something, so that you're supporting a local business and you're also not giving prepackaged big chocolate candies.
I just want to reclaim Halloween treats from Nestle. That's really all I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a. I'm glad you brought that up because those tiny candy bars, individually wrapped, like there's so much plastic. The stat I have here in the U.S. alone, so that's not including Canada. I couldn't find a stat for Canada. It's 600 million pounds of Halloween candy wrappers that like those wrappers aren't recyclable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like.
Well, and it's not just those wrappers too. Like think you get like all of those wrappers in, sometimes it's a box, sometimes it's a bag, but those all come shipped on a pallet, which is wrapped in like packing saran wrap, whatever it's called. And like it's crazy. And then lots of people buy them, not maybe bringing reusable bags, so they're putting them in more plastic bags to get them from the store to the car to the car to the house. Like it's just crazy, all of the plastic that comes along with each and every individually wrapped one. So do you have, before I offer my insight, do you have any suggestions for candy that's not wrapped in plastic?
Um, raisins that come in a cardboard box,
Yeah,
but
I remember getting sunrays.
besides like homemade treats, I couldn't really think of anything because I spent most of my time, because honestly the last couple of years I haven't even been giving out Halloween candy, like for a long time I haven't, mostly because I'm usually doing something on Halloween, so I'm not typically home a lot, so I just don't give out candy. Please don't come egg my house if you.
That's honestly like a really wonderful solution, is to just not give it out. Like I love that kids get excited about it, but I mean really that's one of the first things that we can say when it comes to Christmas waste and reducing it, is like don't feel obligated to give and receive gifts. I think it's the same idea. It's just a harder pill to swallow when it feels like you're taking joy away from children.
And even then, I think from when I was a kid in comparison to now, I think trick-or-treating has definitely lessened in popularity. Like, I think
Eggs are waste free.
that's it. I just give out hard-boiled eggs. You know what? Just hard-boil a bunch of eggs and give them out. And then whatever you don't give out, you can just make egg salad sandwiches.
Great.
But yeah, I honestly think that trick-or-treating is becoming less and less popular. Maybe I'm just not a kid anymore, but I remember my mom stays home and gives out candy, and she very often comments about how over the last decade even, she's had less and less kids trick-or-treating, even less so last year because of COVID.
Yeah.
So it could be one of those things that maybe eventually just kind of goes out of style, which is kind of sad from a community standpoint, but maybe something better will take its place. Like maybe an annual event that Waste Free Edmonton is starting to host on Halloween. That's a pretty cool event that could work into a nice segue, unless you have other things to say.
I've got so many things to say.
Sorry, go. Sorry.
So
I've
been trying to do like crazy amounts of scouring and scavenging to find all of the plastic-free candy options. So I've been looking anytime I'm out, like I'll pop into a Dollar Tree, a Dollarama, Walmart, Canadian Tire, Superstore, Bulk Barn. Like I've been looking everywhere. And what I've come to realize is almost all of it from like a big box store comes all packaged in plastic except Smarties. I've found Smarties at Walmart and Superstore that are just in paper boxes and then in like paper like individual boxes, and then the outer packaging is also paper, which like we need to think about the impact that's having on trees and deforestation, but at least it's plastic free. So there's always pros and cons. And yesterday I had some time to kill, so I popped in at Bulk Barn, and actually lots of places, I'm surprised by this, don't yet have their Halloween stuff out. So I couldn't fully commit to this, sharing my findings, but like I noticed at Dollarama, they had a bunch of chocolate like eyeballs wrapped with the foil, but they came in the horrible nets that like those plastic nets that you're always seeing animals suffocating on, and they always find their way out. Like I can't justify that. So I was like, oh, I'm sure they have these at Bulk Barn. They weren't out yet, but I'm sure they will be. So at Bulk Barn, what I did see was like Reese's cups individually wrapped in foil. I found gobstoppers, I found bottle caps, I found like there's tons. If you look in the bins, there was tons that came in little foil, like the chocolate loonies, chocolate toonies, and this is before Halloween. And then that got me to thinking, it doesn't need to be Halloween branded candy. Like think about how it would last you into November, maybe even December. And at December, you don't need to see like little spiders and like marketing changes so much. So if it's just like standard, then like it doesn't need to be Halloween specific. And then that led me to thinking, oh, well, like what if I checked out like unconventional aisles at the grocery store? So at Superstore, I was down like the international food aisles, and they have little wafers that were also wrapped in foil and paper. So just kind of investigating different areas. And then something else that I realized is like we never give like one of the mini like Kit Kats or one of like it's always a handful. And so I was like, how much like per bar, like what are we spending? So I did some research, and when you buy the big boxes of candy, they go anywhere from like 15 to 30 cents per like mini bar, depending on how big the pack you buy is. So like for argument's sake, let's say they're 20 cents a piece. If you're giving a handful with 5, that's $1 a piece. So like you could just be that awesome house that gives out the big chocolate bars. If you know you're spending $1 per kid, then like spend $1 on something good. Like it's a lot easier to find a big package that's plastic free than the small ones. Like the big packages of gobstoppers are cardboard. Big packages of Smarties, cardboard. There's a lot more candies that aren't in plastic when they're a little bit bigger. So if you just kind of commit to that, you could also, like I remember every once in a while there'd be a house that would give a can of pop. You could do like a glass bottle of those like Jones sodas that have cotton candy flavors. I'm pretty sure they have bottles now too. So it doesn't have to be traditional candy. It could even be a practical item. I've read a lot about people giving non-food items, but the idea of like Halloween plastic rings and like plastic eyeballs and like it's just more plastic waste to stay away from. But there might be like a practical, like what if it's like a lip chap or a like I don't know, maybe there's something else that I haven't figured out what that is, because a lot of it seems like just unnecessary plastic waste. But just kind of getting the ball rolling with thinking outside the box and not getting big chocolate single wrap mini ones. I just found at Bulk Barn, I bought a box of bottle caps. So we're giving out like the big tubes of bottle caps. Oh,
cool. Kids will appreciate that, I'm sure.
If my partner doesn't eat them all before Halloween, they're hiding in my car right now.
That's probably a good idea, is to hide them.
Yeah. That's
cool. Yeah, those are all really good ideas for how to reduce plastic waste on for giving out candy. Do you have any other tips for candy-related waste reduction?
I think that's all I have. I think we're ready for your really awesome segue.
Yes. Okay. So if trick-or-treating ever goes out of style, or if you want to try something else along with trick-or-treating with your kids. Sorry. What's that?
2 great comments. One person suggested change. Totally. I used to love getting a loonie or a toonie in my trick-or-treat bag. And then, yeah, coins. I don't know if coins was like the change coins or like the chocolate coins, but either way, plastic-free alternative. Awesome. Thank you for that. Sorry to interrupt, I just didn't want that.
No, that's okay. That's great. I had peripheral vision, or just like tunnel vision, because I was so excited to talk about a Waste Free Edmonton event that we did for the first time last year, but it was thought of pretty late. It was like a week before Halloween that we thought of the idea. But this Halloween on Sunday, it's Saturday this year, I believe. No, it's Sunday. Sunday, October 31st.
Take credit when we say we thought of the idea. Shawn had this brilliant idea right before Halloween.
So we called it Trash and Treat. So the idea is that you're going to be in a Halloween costume anyways. So a fun thing to do with your family, with your friends, your neighbors, is to dress up in your Halloween costumes, go out into your communities and pick up garbage and pick up litter. And then after that, you can find a way to treat yourself for the community work that you've done. You can either make treats beforehand or after with your friends and family, or you can go to a local business and purchase, if somewhere makes cookies, like a local bakery has cookies or cupcakes, or you just want to go for dinner to a local restaurant, COVID protocols given, treat yourself after collecting litter. So we called it Trash and Treat because you're picking up trash and picking up litter in your Halloween costume and then going out and treating yourself, or going home and treating yourself with a homemade treat, or taking treats to your friends and family. There's a lot of fun stuff that you can do. Last year we didn't have much of a runway to promote it, but we had quite a few people throw on their Halloween costumes and go out and pick up litter, take pictures of themselves, and tag us on social media. This year we have quite a bit of runway, so we're hoping that more people get involved, similar to our Earth Day event this year. We're working with the city through Capital City Cleanup. So you'll be able to get cleanup litter kits from Capital City Cleanup, which is really great. The city has been very supportive of any cleanup efforts that we have, as well as, it's always a good time to get educated about our single-use plastic bylaw that will be debated by the new city council. We have a municipal election coming up in October 18th, I believe, is the day. I think Banff polls are already open, but the cool thing that Waste Free Edmonton has is that we actually sent out a survey to all the municipal candidates running for city council and running for mayor to get their stance about their stance on waste and waste reduction in the city. So you can go to our website, wastefreeedmonton.ca, or is it just wastefree.ca? It's all over our social media as well, so you can look at which ward you're in, and you can go look at the mayoral candidates' responses, and you can vote for someone who is actually going to support waste reduction, someone who supports and endorses our single-use plastic bylaw. So that's a cool way to get involved municipally, and you can help us advocate for more waste-free Edmonton. Again, this Halloween on October 31st, we are hosting Trash and Treat. It's an all-day event. It's a self-directed event. So throw on your costume, grab your friends, grab your family, grab your parents, grab your kids, grab your grandparents, go into your neighborhood, pick up some litter, and then treat yourself afterwards how you see fit. And make sure you take a picture of your costumes and tag us on social media.
We'd love to see you out there in action. And it's one of those things, the more people that share it, the more people find out about it, and the more, hopefully, your picture will inspire other people to participate. So as much as we love seeing you, we'd also love to see you empower your friends, your communities, and your neighborhoods to get on board with us as well.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else to add, Shawn? I missed you so much last month. I love our wine.
No, it was a busy time, but I'm glad to be back. I'm glad that I'm going to have more capacity for Waste for Edmonton stuff, which is really great, because I hope we can roll into this winter having some really cool events, having some really awesome discussions, and really just keep building on the movement that we have here. And yeah, I love that we have Wine and Waste. I sorely missed it for September, and I'm happy to be back. I'm happy that being back was a fun one where we were dressed up as a dinosaur and a unicorn or a dragon, because it just made it that much more fun. But yeah, I'm excited for the future of Waste Free in our city. And like we said at the beginning, if you want to volunteer, please contact us either through our emails or through our DMs. Check out all of our social media. Tell your friends about us. talk to your family about how you can reduce waste at home, and together we can make Edmonton the most waste-conscious city on the planet.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us, everyone. We'll see you next month.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.